Ahí llegó el ministro. Adelante, ministro.
Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the IDB Group Pavilion. We're going to start the event about the role of Latin America and the Caribbean in the world economy, in particular the opportunities for the region. And I would like to start by welcoming our president, Ilan Goffin.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Fatih Birol, the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. Alexandre Silveira, bem-vindo. Brazil's Energy Minister. Andrés Camacho, Colombia's Minister of Mines and Energy. And our Annabelle, our Vice President. I'm delighted to welcome you to this conversation on the role that Latin America and the Caribbean play in the new world energy economy. To succeed in the energy transitions, policymakers need reliable and up-to-date data. I want to start by thanking Fatih and his team at the IEA for the Latin America Energy Outlook. The report provides a comprehensive analysis of the region's advances in the energy transition, and it also points to new opportunities in the horizon. Today, our region is a true leader in the field. It has the world's cleanest energy matrix, with fully 60% of generation coming from renewables, compared to a global average of just 30%. This is due to the development of the region's extraordinary hydropower resources, but is also the results of innovative regulations that have attracted private investment in sources such as solar and wind power. So hydro, solar, wind. The region has many untapped opportunities to accelerate a just and inclusive energy transition. These include capitalizing on emerging frontiers in electrification, developing new fuels such as hydrogen, and leveraging mineral resources that are critical to battery production. For green energy alone, and that's important, we estimate that the 12 million tons of green hydrogen Europe will need annually by 2030. 1/3 could be exported from the region. Latin America is also home for 2/3 of the lithium and 38% of the copper. We also cannot forget that communities in some part of our region still don't have reliable electricity in their homes. Between 2016 and 2021, the IDB, us, financed programs that connected 2.7 million people for electricity for the first time. At the IDB, we are honored to be supporting this transition has our role as the leading development partner for Latin America and the Caribbean, working together with governments, companies, and civil society. Since the last COP, the IDB led the preparation of two of the 70 million investment plans in two countries, Brazil and Colombia, which were approved by the climate investment funds. This plan provides concessional financing to improve the flexibility of the Brazilian and the Colombian power grids, help them integrate and manage renewables such as solar and wind, and to decarbonize other uses of energy while leveraging more resources from the private sector. Our goal is to help LAC countries to reach 100% access to electricity as soon as possible. We recently approved a credit line, for example, in El Salvador, for up to $180 million to help the country achieve universal access. We are also working with countries to improve the physical and commercial integration of electricity grids so they can absorb more renewable energy. The IDB financed key steps in the integration of electricity grids in Central America, the Andean region, and the Southern Cone. And we recently approved financing for a new interconnection between Ecuador and Peru. Projects like this are also key to regional integration in areas such as electromobility, an area that have made great strides in the past year. We'll help it to design business models for electricity buses in 14 cities, including Bogota, Buenos Aires, Cali, Guatemala City, Lima, Medellin, Santiago, and Santo Domingo. We are helping all these cities having electric buses. Just 2 weeks ago, the IDB Invest, the IDB Group's private sector arm, announced financing that will give Chile nearly 1,000 electric buses, making it the country the second largest fleet in the world. IDB also financing the introduction of 400 electric buses in Colombia in collaboration with Enel, X, and InfraBridge. And with the Green Climate Funds and local governments, the IDB has structured a 450 million program to accelerate the transition to more resilient electric public transport systems in 9 countries: Barbados, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Panama, Paraguay, Uruguay. All of those we are financing the electric public transport. What about green energy? We approved our first green hydrogen loan, providing 400 million to expand this industry in Chile. And we are supporting a green hydrogen certification program that will give a quality seal to the hydrogen produced in 14 of the region's countries. We are also enthusiastic partners of climate ambition initiative as the RELAC, which aims to achieve 70% of clean energy electricity by 2030. As many of you know, 15 of the RELAC members recently increased their ambition from 70 to 80% clean electricity. The IDB is the technical secretariat of RELAC, providing the technical inputs for this new target that will be presented here on December 5 at 12 noon. So keep tuned. We hope you can join us in this very important target that we are going to announce. To conclude, and let you have the panel and hear the specialists, let me reaffirm that the IDB will continue to be the region's leading development partner, providing knowledge, best practices, partnership, and financing to achieve a secure, just, inclusive, and affordable energy transition, a transition that promotes economic and social development for all. Thank you very much and have a very good panel. And back to you.
Thank you, President. And we're going to continue with a presentation by Fatigue. First of all, I would like to say thank you on behalf of not only the energy sustainability team of the BAM, but on the region for having the Latin American outlook. We're going to see the most important findings, conclusions, and recommendations. So please, the floor is yours.
So, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. And I will be very brief because I want to hear the views coming from Brazil and Colombia. Mr. Minister, it is a great pleasure to see you in a very short period of time, 3 times in India, in France, in Paris, and again here. Thank you very much for that. So, dear colleagues, I would like to tell you first of all why we made a major report on Latin America. What is the reason, which is now, I can tell you, making a lot of headwaves in Latin America. We get a lot of questions from governments, why it is this number, that number, and we discuss with many experts, learn from them throughout this preparation. I wanted to hear my special thanks go to Tiago. Thank you very much for all the advice we get from you, like many other experts. So the reason we made this report is while Latin America has a lot of energy potential, oil, gas, hydropower, bioenergy, solar, wind, we see a huge opportunity coming for Latin America. Huge opportunity. Because clean energy is growing around the world, and Latin America has all the chances, potential to benefit from this clean energy economy. I am sorry to tell you that in the past, Latin America had a lot of potential and opportunity, but couldn't make the most out of it, to be very frank. But now, we, IEA, came up with this report to highlight what opportunities are for Latin America in this clean energy economy. Number 1, green or clean hydrogen. Dear colleagues, when I talk with the governments around the world, when I talk with the business around the world, everybody loves hydrogen. It is good. And everybody sees hydrogen and hydrogen trade like the LNG trade we are seeing now. In the future, it will be like that. And people want to buy, Europeans, other consumers want to buy clean hydrogen. And in our report, we show that the clean hydrogen economics is one of the best in Latin America, because it always also comes to the point, where do you buy it the cheap? What is the cheapest source of clean hydrogen? And Latin America has huge potential for clean hydrogen using at home and export it. Many countries, many regions want to export it, but Latin America, because of this huge potential for the renewables, and this is a big opportunity. My suggestion for the Latin American governments, when you start to make the projects with your future customers, when it comes to the final investment decisions, please compare your cost competitiveness, cost advantage with the other regions. So make your agreements, trade agreements on the basis of that, so that you don't regret later. And it is in our report, you will see. So this is one suggestion I want to make. The second suggestion, in the world we are seeing the clean energy technology manufacturing is growing, very good. And this requires a lot of critical minerals, such as lithium, such as copper, such as nickel, such as graphite. And Latin America, again, has a big potential for these critical minerals. This lithium, famous lithium triangle, don't forget it. But my advice is something different. I see that the many Latin American countries are now having deals with the mining companies around the world and selling their critical minerals as a raw material. In my view, this is not the right strategy. Right strategy is to refine it, process it at home, and multiply it by the cost by now a factor of 10 and sell it. Therefore, my suggestion to Latin American countries is building the manufacturing capacity at home and multiply it by 10 and sell it. It is like you have the oil, instead of selling the crude oil, you refine it, sell the diesel or naphtha or LPG. It is much better and you will get a much more value added. This is my second suggestion to Latin American countries. My third suggestion, I will stop here, is to Brazil as a G20 chair. We are at the IEA very happy to support Brazil as we did many other countries. And my colleague here, Dan Donner, our Sherpa, is working very closely with his Brazilian colleagues. Now, I have a lot of suggestions to Brazilian government, but if I can, I would like to highlight 2 points there. One, I am happy that the Brazil chairmanship comes after Indonesia and India giving a strong voice to emerging world. And in my view, it will be excellent if Brazil would put an emphasis on Africa, because Africa is the continent which needs the urgent help for many, many reasons. African energy, African climate, and African investment for clean energy. So this is one suggestion I want to make. Second suggestion I want to make the Brazilian government is, we discussed here in Dubai that we all, I think most of us would like to reach really 1.5 degrees target, 2050. And we should be clear, and I hope G20 presidency will support this. There are different ways for different countries to reach this 2050. The destination is clear: 2050 net zero, reducing the fossil fuel emissions, reducing the fossil fuels. But different countries may have different pathways to go there, and it is important that we have understanding for each other's different strategies, different roles, and supporting each other, rather than having only one single pathway. This is what the IEA works with many countries around the world. So here, once again, we are very happy that we made this report. We are surprised that so many governments from Latin America coming to us and asking further advice and suggestions. And I want to thank the Brazil, Colombia, and also IDB for a great cooperation for making this report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatiga. Now I'll pass the word to Anabel Gonzalez, the Vice President of Countries of the ADB, who will moderate the conversation with the Minister of Brazil and with Juan Carlos Bedoya, Director of Regulation from the Ministry of Energy and Mines of Colombia. Adelante,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Juan Pablo. Y voy a pasarme a español. Vamos a tener un...
Let me now go into Spanish. We have a multilingual panel. We're going to have Portuguese, English, and Spanish. So thank you very much, President Ilan. And thank you for your comments and presentation. I think you're right that this is a huge opportunity. And it's a food for thought as to some of the enormous potential that we have in Latin America to leverage that the advantages of energy transition. And what are some of the key challenges that we face? You've already heard the president state how the IDB is involved in various cooperation efforts with countries in the region using different instruments such as co-funding with the public and private sectors, as well as and implementing advisory services. And we're seeking a transition that is fair, just, and inclusive, and also generating growth opportunities. We're also supporting the institutional regulatory process, supporting electrical energy grids, as well as the rules of trade that make trade possible, looking at efforts to step up electric energy transportation. There was some interesting and impressive statistics, as well as the deployment of investments for green hydrogen in the region. Now, Colombia and Brazil are two countries that have been taking decisive steps forward, mainly in providing a universal access to new energy sources. There's another challenge, however, for the economies of Brazil and Colombia. They seek to be leaders in renewables, and also there's major resources that represent potential revenues for their economies, and they're developing plans and considering plans in order to upgrade these industries and provide new sources of jobs. So let me now offer the floor to the ministers. Let's start off with Minister Alexandre Silveira. Thank you very much for joining us in this panel discussion. Could you discuss some of the key findings and recommendations from the International Technology Agency, and what steps is Brazil taking in order to leverage the advantages of this energy transition process?
Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone that's been introduced by the Vice President of Countries, Hannibal, who's moderating this panel. Always good to see the importance of women being represented in these matters. I would like to put on the record how proud we are in Brazil to see the IDB fostering programs that are so important and worthwhile for Latin America. And in 1959, J. Juscelino Kubitschek in Brazil, who had a hand in the very conception of the IDB and all of the different programs carried out by IDB this year, Green Coalition, the Amazon Forever, new financial instruments for the bank and for development. And Abel, a friend of Brazil, clear thinking person in how he addresses these topics on behalf of the IEA, striking a balance to make sure that this transition takes place in such a way that it create opportunities, that it be fair, balanced, inclusive, and that this transition actually lead to the sustainability of the planet, environmental protection, and to be a source of economic development in our countries, especially of the global South, and the industrialized countries, so that this ultimately would become a source of social justice, fulfilling its function of caring for people. Now, Juan Carlos Bedoya, Director of Regulation of the Ministry of Energy of Colombia, would like to compliment his comments. Neighboring country, Juan Pablo Bonilla, the Minister of the Sector of Climate Change and Sustainable Development of the IDB, who also is taking part in this panel. I greet Senator Carlos Viana Ribeiro, who was my colleague in the Senate in Brazil, and the agency, that is, it was a low level of investment by Latin American countries in infrastructure. And I was very happy during the last year of my mandate with this amendment to the Constitution. We invested nearly 4 billion a year in the last 4 years of government in infrastructure, 20 billion reais of Brazilian currency invested in the infrastructure through the Ministry of Transportation, and Carlos Gianna playing a key role in that. Now, I'd like to put on the record here that Brazil is known as a country full of renewable sources of energy with much potential, 11% of fresh water in the world, a vast expansion of the country. But not just this. Brazil, for many years now, has been making hefty investments for us to reach the situation in which we find ourselves right now. 88% renewables in our energy mix, 50% clean. On average, it's 15 in the world, 28 regarding the whole electric grid or mix. Now, this year, 186,000 kilometers of transmission lines is what we have in Brazil. Given the continental size of Brazil, ours is the only country that has, well, we can say 27 states of the country are interconnected with these transmission lines. And the last stage of this connection between Manaus and Boa Vista in the state of Roraima, that last connection is being done right now to complete our connection with South America. We are connected to Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and now we will bring into this, that is a Venezuelan energy plant, adding to our clean energy, as well as the thermal power production from the state of Roraima in the Amazon region in Brazil. We have 182 isolated or separate systems without any transmission because it's not economically viable. And given the demographic distribution of people, these are standalone plants, but the Parintins line is being hooked up finally. So the Brazilian people pay 12 billion reais a year for diesel for the thermal plants in the north. And so we now have the largest decarbonization program in our electric sector in the world. We are working with hybrid solar and thermal working together to ensure energy security, and that will facilitate this transition toward renewable green sources of energy. Now, the biggest problem we face right now is of energy inclusion, that is light or electricity power for everyone. In 2005, in Lula's first mandate, he set that goal for the country, and we have doubled we've gone to 2.5 billion annual investments in this, talking up to 380,000 families that don't yet have access to power through batteries that are powered by solar panels in these far-flung, isolated places. We want to do away with energy poverty in Brazil by 2026. As I said, We're very pleased with this modern project for transmission. $3 billion investment, 20 billion more are going to be invested in December, 20 million in March, 600 billion reais overall, $6 billion, $12 billion nearly, in order for us to bolster the transmission from the north and the northeast of Brazil to the center and southeast region, making it possible for us to double investments in renewable sources of energy, biomass, hydro, and solar in the northeast of Brazil, because we believe in reindustrializing Brazil. And what we want is to industrialize the northeast of Brazil. This government administration is very clear-eyed and focused on the desire to fight hunger, inequality. This is still a reality in Brazil, unfortunately, and this transition should be, as I said, as Pope Francis said, it should be fair, inclusive, and compulsory. And so here is some food for thought for you. Countries like Brazil that have these clean and renewable mixes of energy sources, and they see in this an opportunity beyond just meeting their international commitments, the 2030 Paris Accord goals, for example, but also to be able to export sustainability. So, just a thought I'd like to leave with you. I believe in the vigor and the force and the spirit of the multilateral banks as the IDB that's made a great effort to assist in this energy transition. So let's think about how we are really going to ensure that industrialized countries, those countries that lost their chance to preserve, unlike the global south. And so the two legs of energy transition, so necessary for protecting life, fauna, but that this transition be an opportunity to bring people on board, to include people. Brazil is known for its biofuels and how much potential that holds out. We all know how much progress we have made there, but 3 months ago, I was at the National Congress. It was sent to the lower house, is going to be sent to the upper house of the Republic. I believe that the National Parliament is going to enact this law. It's going to be cutting edge, revolutionary, the fuel of the future, we're calling it, that would bring together all these decarbonization policies from transportation and urban mobility in our country. We have broadened our participation or involvement in the use of vegetable oils and diesel, and we want to double that by 2030, making sure that the biodiesel industry doubles in Brazil, creating jobs and further opportunity. Now, there's a mandate for green diesel. We created a mandate that be included among our mix of energy sources. Sustainable aviation fuel is another thing we are aiming for. That was a big fight, so we are making great strides. But what I would like to ask everyone to think about, we need to create mechanisms to avail ourselves of this window of opportunity, that it truly be a window of opportunities beyond mere sustainability for us to economically help the most vulnerable populations in this energy transition that we need to champion, defend, needs to be fair, inclusive, and preferably compulsory. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, ministro, por esa exposición tan amplia y comprensiva que usted nos ha hecho. Y voy a regresar con usted en unos minutos. Primero me gustaría
We
pasarle.
appreciate your rather comprehensive description. I'm going to come back to you in a few minutes. I'm going to yield the floor to Juan Carlos Bedoya from the Ministry of Energy in Colombia, representing Mr. Andres Camacho, the minister of that agency. Can you tell us a little bit about the IEA conclusions and the policies, and how is Colombia position to deal with the challenges of developing a green economy?
In English, given that most of the audience they have different languages here. So, but for first of all, good afternoon to everyone, to the delegation from Brazil, Anna, also the delegation from the agency and the EDB. Uh, Also, I would like to extend and convey the apologies from our minister. He has a last minute call, the duty call from our president, and with the busy agenda, so they asked me to represent our ministry here in this panel. And coming back to the question regarding the what are the opinions of the ministry and the conclusions regarding the policies from the agency. So first of all, it is important to mention that back in 2021, our country decided to start the paperwork and all the activities in order to belong to the agency. And in that line, our current government, which is worth to say that in our more than 200 years of history, this government is the one that has the largest intention and is social oriented. And all the processes that we have been facing regarding the policies from the agency, the different activities that we have been developing towards industrialization and energy transition are social oriented as well. This is something that is mainly in our scope. So, having said that, Colombia, under the leading of our ministry, has been developing the three main evaluations that are required by the agency. The first one is the scoping mission questionnaire. The second one is the IDR, the in-depth review, and the third one is the emergency response evaluation. And we have already completed the first two of them. Part of the recommendations from the first two, for example, the agency, and this is very important for us, is that it is recognized that Colombia is a country which depends largely on our hydrocarbons exports. So Colombia is a country with oil, but is not, let's say, our main activity, but is by market conditions the product that represents the largest percentage of our GDP, for example. So Colombia has unique opportunities, but also unique challenges in order to produce and make possible the energy transition, considering those kind of subjects that I just mentioned. However, at the same time, some of the recommendations that the agency provided is that Colombia, even though we are giving and we are actually in our ongoing process for the transition, we have also to make sure that we have to maintain the fossil fuels supply for the future, especially for potential emergencies. This is one of the things that we need to make sure and guarantee that is going to be there for emergency and unexpected situations in the upcoming years. Also, in terms of regulatory aspects, which is actually the department that I'm leading currently, is that our ministry is leading the development of it is called the National System of Emergency, which is similar to the NESO. We are developing all the regulatory framework in order to create and develop this kind of agency in our country as part of the recommendations of the agency, and we consider that this is crucial and very, very important for our energy transition. And of course, Colombia has the firm intention to transform our energy matrix based on all the potential, as mentioned by the Ministry from Brazil. We have similar, let's say, blessed from the nature, and we are also giving important steps in that line. Just I will take just some more minutes just to mention three main aspects as facts that we have been developing in that line about how are we transforming our energy matrix. So the first one, and it's worth to say that the energy transition in Colombia, we have named it or coined it with a particular name. And I'm going to link that with my first sentences is that I was saying that this is a government with a social sense. So this transition is not only an energy transition, it's a just energy transition, thinking about the communities and the reindustrialization of our nation must include our communities, our population. So this is very crucial for our government, also in our energy policies. So Colombia is actually a, a, given the steps for the transition through using renewable energy resources. Um, Currently, I'm referring this to our electricity matrix. Our installed capacity is about 20 gigawatts, and only 1 gigawatt has been installed using renewable variable energy resources. However, Colombia has been characterized for having around 67% of hydro. The remaining 33 each percent of the matrix is based on thermal. But our main goal is by the end of 2026 to have our first 6 gigawatts of variable energy resources. That means this is to say wind and solar in our matrix. So, secondly, our country is working, as I mentioned, towards creating the regulatory framework for these technologies and for the transition, which is pretty much the work that we have been developing, also including the focus on the reindustrialization, also considering our population. And the third point, and I will and I will take the opportunities that to say that not only with minerals, we have a lot of potential with different minerals that are required for the energy transition. Um, Also, we have other resources like the wind and the solar in the North Coast, and Colombia is going to be the first country in the Latin American region and in the Caribbean that is going to start with the licitation processes for the offshore wind technologies. We have been developing a huge effort in that area, and we are going to have our announcement of the releasing process on Tuesday, 12:45 p.m., and all the audiences invited to join us to this announcement. We are actually considering in this process an area of around more than 10,000 square kilometers for a potential between 1 to 4 gigawatts for the development of offshore wind technologies. So, well, thank you for I took more time than required, but yeah, those are the main messages that I wanted to provide with the regarding the conclusions of our agency studies and also the steps that we are giving towards the transition. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Juan Carlos, por su exposición.
Juan Carlos, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we still have a few more minutes, but I would like to ask both the minister and Juan Carlos. You've talked about a very clear vision with great expectations for your respective countries, especially as it relates to the energy transition. What role can the multilateral organizations play, particularly the Inter-American Development Bank, in supporting your implementation of your respective visions?
Na questão do relatório do IEA. Ao mesmo tempo que ele aponta as potencialidades já conhecidas da América Latina para a transição energética, tanto as potencialidades naturais quanto os esforços já feitos pelas políticas públicas.
The opportunities we have for transition of energy and all the potential that we have making use of critical minerals that was rightfully said here need to be produced to generate wealth and income for developing countries. He also raised something that makes us underscore how important the role of the multilateral banks and of the IEA are, that in addition to the role of low-cost financing for energy transition and for the sustainability of countries in Latin America, this makes me once again think about the need for us to come up with objective criteria for this transition worldwide. Is this going to be an international compulsory carbon credit? Are we going to be talking about more rigorous and robust low-cost resources for made available to developing countries? We have to make sure that developed countries figure high in this agenda of sustainability of the Latin American countries, because the agency itself said in its report that despite the force represented by Latin America, we still have the lowest per capita level of consumption of energy in those countries that have the greatest potential. That is a stark contradiction, and that's why I'm saying that the multilateral banks, and the IDB is doing this, we all need to work together. The multilateral banks, the International Agency of Energy, diplomacy, so that we can make of this energy transition a tool that, beyond fostering sustainability, which is absolutely necessary, but that it be an instrument, an agent for building wealth, peace, and prosperity. To have prosperity, we need social justice, and those countries that are going to be included in this process have to have a level of needs being met for the citizens, by the citizens. So, as we heard, this needs to be fair, inclusive, and preferably compulsory, that there be worldwide awareness that we all live in the same ecosystem. It's not going to do us any good for one country or another country to adopt certain specific measures if it's not something that helps everyone.
Thank you. So, without the support of the different agencies, the IDB or the other institutions, governments, embassies, I will say that this is not going to happen. The energy transition and and in order to transform our electricity matrix and for every single nation, I think is crucial and very important. And I will take this chance to thank all the support that you have been providing to us. So definitely Colombia is not a stranger in terms of the support that is needed. And I'm just going to convey the message from our president from her first speech here at COP28. And most of our country, when you take a look to the GDP of our countries, most of that is compromised with external debt. So what is the budget that we are going to allocate for the energy transition? So definitely Colombia, and as much as the same with most of the countries in our region, sponsoring from these institutions and financing budgets are extremely required. So currently our government, probably I didn't mention all of that, but we have different fronts towards the energy transition, and we are actually making big bets on energy communities, for example. So we envision that every single Colombian is able to produce electricity for their own consumptions and actually inject energy to the network. This is part of our just and inclusive energy transition perspective. We are also making big bets, for instance, on mobility based on electricity, for example. Also, the transition from our coal-based thermal plants. So we are trying to start the studies in order to, in maybe several years, just to clean our matrix, trying to commute our coal thermal power plants using different technologies, and expect a lot of participation of hydrogen projects, trying to make the substitution for those kind of technologies. And of course, just to summarize, we actually require a lot of support in those lines. From the IDB and from different agencies and institutions, we have been receiving support. First of all, developing the studies towards like what are the steps, what is the roadmap, should be the regulatory framework, and coming back to our offshore projects, for instance, which is something that is getting mature at this point because it's actually we are on the way for the offshore right now. So we are requiring a lot of support, for instance, in the port industry development. Without not ports, the offshore technology is not going to happen. We also require a lot of support, for instance, for the offshore projects. We also require support regarding what are the mechanisms, commercial mechanisms in order to transact the energy. We had a lot of potential in our Caribbean coast for offshore technologies, 50 gigawatts, and at this point we are going to start with the first 4 gigawatts. So in future we need to determine what are we going to do with this large potential of offshore wind energy, 50 gigawatts out of the 20 that we have currently in our matrix, and out of the 11 megawatts that we consume in the peak hours. So what are we going to do with all that energy? This is something that we definitely require support in order to actually convert our country, taking advantage of our geographical position in order to export energy, hydrogen to the northern part of America, and different continents that require. So all in all, just to summarize, is that support is actually required and needed. And we would like to take this chance to thank again the support from the IDB and all the agencies, embassies, and institutions in this path.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Juan Carlos.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. On behalf of the Inter-American Development Bank, I wanted to confirm our availability to continue working very closely with you and with all the other countries in the region to support this energy transition. With that, I'd like to thank Minister Silverio. Muito obrigada for your kind words. Likewise, Juan Pablo. And I yield the floor now to...
I think what is needed here is that, unlike I work with all the countries around the world, all the regions, but when it comes to Latin America, you don't need to convince the Latin American citizens about sustainability. It is like football, it is in their DNA. It is sustainability is in DNA. You don't need to convince that you need this thing. It is already there, like the football, it is in their blood. But what is needed is the finance. This is the key issue. And for finance, I think Latin American countries need to enjoy low-cost financing, concessional financing from the multilateral and international financial institutions if we want to see a just and equitable energy transition. This I wanted to say.
No, with that, I was going to refer exactly to that because as manager of the Sustainable Development of the IDB, it's amazing to see what you have been able to do in the last years as Minister of Energy as a sector. And as the president of the bank was saying, having this goal for not only renewable energy, but also to do it in a just way, including the social components, is going to be very important. We have had different events in the last couple of days here, ones with the different mayors of the region, and they were talking about the importance of electromobility to improve quality of life. That is totally linked to have every day more cleaner metrics. So you start seeing that connection about renewable energy, energy efficiency, but also electromobility in cities with the social impact of improving air quality in cities. So you start seeing that social benefit of having the energy transition that we need to communicate better. The second component that I wanted to highlight is the sharing of knowledge. I think something that we're trying to do together, and RELAC is a good example, is to share knowledge that different countries are producing to be implemented in others. This morning, we were with the government of Dominican Republic, for example. IDB is starting to do, as well as we did with Brazil and Colombia and Costa Rica, an energy transition plan with the climate investment funds for Dominican Republic to start closing coal power plants. And Chile, for example, did something similar, Bidding Best, our private sector part, supported a transition to advanced closing of coal power plants in Chile. So I think just the exchange of what every country is doing is another role that we can support in the future. Finally, what you just mentioned, financing. As the president said, every day more, as part of the MDB reforms, we're trying to not only to go beyond what we can lend with our balance sheet, but also support countries, for example, to do sustainability linked bonds, energy bonds, to think bigger in terms of energy transition. An example that Ilan, our president, is presenting is Uruguay. It was the first sustainability linked bond to the NDC of Uruguay, including biodiversity metrics. They for nature swaps. This morning we were here with Mia Motley. The IDB is doing the second Day for Nature for Barbados. So thinking about these innovative instruments to support the energy transition is going to be key for the future. And last, the role of the private sector. BidInvest, our private sector arm, is going through a potential capital increase that hopefully will go very well next year. And one of the key issues is to support energy transition and green the metrics in the region. So I wanted to end with that is regulatory issues from the public side to allow private sector mobilization to complement the agenda. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having all of you here today.